Hello and welcome to the Round Ball Australia podcast. My name is Lachie Avil, fresh off full time at, Campbelltown Stadium tonight. Macarthur Bulls 2-1 victors. Geez, I'll get something right eventually. 2-1 victors over Taipo from Hong Kong in the ACL2. But Poletti, hello to you. Crucially, it means they have locked in their progression to the knockout phase of the competition with a game to spare as well, which is handy because that away trip to Beijing, Guan on the final match day would have been a little bit nervy if there was something on the line.
I mean, there might still be something on the line depending on how much MacArthur value top spot in the group. Obviously, True. By the time you were listening to this, you will know whether or not MacArthur has topped the group. We're recording just a little bit before kickoff in the Kong and Hanoi Beijing Guan game. If that game ends in a draw, then MacArthur are guaranteed to top the group. If there is a winner in that game, then it will come down to the final match day. And so MacArthur versus Beijing might have something on the line if Beijing emerge victorious. So, Stefan Mork, I know you're listening. Not that it'll matter now. Do something, rally the troops for MacArthur, for the coefficient, for Australia. Come on. National pride. I don't care where you're playing in the world. National pride. Let's go.
100%. Hopefully, at the very least, even if the game doesn't end in a draw, hopefully Steph gets the win. Knock China out of the group. We know it's big for the coefficient. Matt and I talked about that plenty on Wednesday night for your Wednesday morning pod. So we're not going to go over that too much again today. I know we have to talk about that sparingly, but at least then, Steph would go through as well. We have a little bit more storyline there. It was a good night for the Bulls. They did look challenging a little bit. And, like that game against Guan, and it will be interesting to see how seriously Stayovsky takes it, because they are going to progress through the group. Yes, top spot, does help you. It means you don't run into a Gamba Osaka in the round of 16 of the ACL2, which is a very good thing. We know this competition different from the Mariners in the AFC Cup. We saw the difficulty that Sydney went through last year, in the semi-final. They lost to Lion City. That game really should have been played against Sanfrecce, who they lost to twice in the group. So there's definitely that spot of value. Do we think that he's going to run out a full team? It feels silly to do that now. I know they've had pretty consistent squads, especially the home games as well. But I feel like traveling away on the final group, you've secured progression. I'm not saying you run the 23s or whatever, but I feel like there would be some rotation there, knowing that you're coming into the thick of the A-League season there as well.
Well, so I'm just having a look at the schedule here. So obviously they've got the quick turnaround of Sunday against Perth Glory. And then they have a 5-day turnaround to Melbourne Victory at home on Friday, the 5th of December. And then 6 days later, they play Beijing in China. But then they don't have a game for a week after that. Their round 8 scheduled clash goes to the 23rd of December, which will be against Melbourne City. That game being part of a doubleheader. It is the Women's Melbourne Derby that is the kickoff there, and I've got strong thoughts on that. You'll have to tune into the Dubcast to hear those. But so after the Beijing game, they don't play for another 8 days until they tackle Brisbane at home. So there is a very good a good gap between the games. So conceivably Mile could run out a full strength side and not have it impact the A-League too much. But I asked him this tonight. He said, look, we'll deal with it when we get there as far as squad rotation is. There might be some players under an injury cloud and the like. So I think there is a good chance he will, just because of the gap between games, but it also wouldn't surprise me if he decides to rest some players, maybe some of the more senior legs in his side.
So for those listening along at home, we're going to welcome in Matt Olsen as well. Just a few minutes late. It's all good. He made it in. We decided we just had to start because it was getting pretty late already. But for those watching along on the YouTube or the video on the podcast as well, I just want to point out that the first thing I saw when Matt eventually loaded into my screen was him just nodding along as if he knew exactly what we were talking about, jumping straight into the conversation. So you pulled it off well. Matt, hello. Another win for the Aussies. We've been talking about the Bulls and how good it is, but they progressed through to the round of 16, which Australian teams should do in this competition. But a little bit of a scare early on.
Yeah, obviously being out west, the game started at 3:45 in the afternoon, so really naturally quite a difficult one to catch. But obviously, seeing the early phases of the game, was a bit of a worrying sign. But really felt that with the way they played, that Macarthur really had the game by the scruff of the neck, and you're ultimately always going to be in a winning position when you sort of equalise early enough as they did. So, a game that provided a bit of a scare. But most remarkably for me, if I'm not mistaken, did Taipo go from being top of the group to now being bottom as a result of that 2-1 turnaround?
That's a good question. Probably, yeah, because all the numbers would have been so tight, and they would have had the head-to-head on Macarthur because obviously they won the first game as well. So, yeah, you're probably right. I mean, it has been a tight group, and it's really good, I think, that the Bulls have managed to kind of course correct a little. Again, like it is hard because I feel like we do undervalue just sitting here on the sidelines, the difficulty of traveling in Asia and especially first up. What does that do to a Macarthur side who we're still in preseason as well? But we made the same arguments about City. They're good. They're both teams are winning games. Good for Australia. Individually as well, Poletti, Luke Vickery, who, look,
yep,
he got 2 goals this game. Now, that may be a generous way of looking at it. The first one, we were talking about it live, felt like it came right out of the Aussie in Asia playbook. Like, it looked good in the first 5 minutes, struggled to turn meaningful possession into shot creation, and then concede a deflected goal, and then score a deflected goal to get yourself back into it. And then the second goal he got was the Luke Bratton free kick off the post, finds himself in space. And I don't know if I'm being too harsh, but he hits it across the face of goal. I don't know if it's going in or clearly because they've given him the goal, but the goalkeeper kind of catches it. But in the act of diving across, the keeper just kind of drags it over the line.
Yeah. So obviously I was at the stadium. Admittedly, I turned up at halftime, but I was at the stadium for the second half.
These kickoff times, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's. I mean, look, I was saying for City's game on Tuesday at 6:45 was actually a decent kickoff time, but I got delayed with some personal stuff. It is what it is. I had no issue with them giving him the first goal because that one looked more like it was on target before the deflection than what the second goal was.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
100%. I thought they were going to take the second goal away from him and give it as an own goal. To the point where I asked Luke about it in the press conference, and he said, I said, are you at all concerned they're going to take the goal away from you? He's like, no, look, at the end of the day, we got through. I'm paraphrasing a little bit there, but that's basically what it was. And then once the press conference was over, I had it confirmed to me from the official match report that no, it is Vickery's goal. It will stand. They're not going to take it off him. I thought that was going off target, to be honest. Like, I could maybe see the angle sneaking in off the post, but even then, those aren't considered on target shot if they go off the post. So, I thought it was going off, but yeah, I don't know what the keeper was doing. It feels like, or at least it looked like he was down, ready to make the save, and the ball came in with such a thunderous velocity that he stumbled and lost his footing, and just unfortunately he was leaned slightly to the left, which sent him to the left, and that's what caused him to go into the goal just on a lost footing. Like it was comical, but
it just feels like if you knew your momentum was taking you that way, like you kind of push or parry it, you wouldn't like collect it almost like you did. You just get it out of there.
You would think so, but I haven't played goalkeeper for 20 odd years, so I'm not going to tell a professional how they should be setting themselves up. But look, I think it's just one of those heat of the moment things that the keeper would absolutely love to have back, but we don't. Macarthur going through, and honestly, it's good for the A-League, it's good for the coefficient, it's good for everything. And I mean, I know you guys talked about it on Wednesday, and it's a bit of a shame that Macarthur won't necessarily, they won't get to host this year should they make the final. But I think this Macarthur side is sneakily set up for a good run.
Yeah, I think they're solid. I think the way the four at the back looks good for Millet. I think having Rose and Bratton alongside each other and the way they play when they get on the ball, like the fullbacks like to get really high. The centre backs will often split for Bratton, or Bratton will just like assume one position in the back three and be the, quarterback style 6, like that's typical centre half that drops deep to pick up the ball. It allows Rose to get forward as more like a box to box player and more space for Caceres as well. And then there's just runs everywhere from the wingers and from the fullbacks. And I think they've set up really well. So I think the decision to move away from the 3 at the back is definitely working for them. But great for the Bulls. They're through. Obviously, as we say, if it's a draw between Kongan and Beijing, they will top the group, but we'll find out in the morning as you're listening to this podcast. Making news elsewhere this week, Matt, since we last chatted, is that FIFA have confirmed the draw mechanisms for the Men's World Cup. So this draw is happening Saturday week, so the morning of the Australia Cup final, actually. SBS are broadcasting it right before the game as well. But FIFA have said there have been some rumours about them changing how the seedings work in terms of the teams that are yet to qualify through the playoffs. But we know now how that's going to work. So the 3 main points, and I did a little spot on the socials for this midweek as well. But if you haven't seen that, the first point is that Australia are confirmed as a Pot 2 team. Now, the very extreme comparison here, Matt, is Croatia, who are ranked 10th in the world, with Luka Modric, who knows if he'll play, probably will, but have made a semi-final and a final in the last 2 World Cups. And South Africa, who are 60 plus at the bottom of Pot 3, who haven't qualified since they hosted the competition in 2010. So I know that is a very extreme kind of exaggeration of the difference in Pot 2 and Pot 3 here, but that is real. So the average quality of the teams, again, in big apostrophe marks, compared to the FIFA World Rankings, will actually drop for the Socceroos because of this, which can make a material difference in terms of qualifying out of the groups into the knockout stage.
Well, firstly, I just would like to point out that I am definitely having some issues since I joined midstream, because there are 4 pixels on my screen that I think make out Poletti's face, but I really can't tell. So I do apologise with a few of my responses and things like that, because you guys are coming across very robotic. There's not really a lot I can do about that.
No worries.
But do you guys know that ad for Tradie beer where the guy's standing on the edge of the cliff and he takes a sip of the beer and goes, and then he's calling out, and all the beer drinkers summon towards him because he's calling out as he's tasting a good beer? That is essentially me with the concept of draw mechanisms. I'm all over it.
I was wondering where you were going with that.
No, but look, this is just such a fascinating dynamic for me, because I think in these comparisons between like South Africa and New Zealand, Norway and Italy both being Pot 3 and Pot 4, I think people just need to calm down a sketch, because every single World Cup prior to this, we've had a similar dynamic going on where one group looks completely stacked, or one set of circumstances from teams looks way harder than another. This is the nature of being at a World Cup. And usually when you think of really comical examples, like a group with New Zealand and Italy and a group with South Africa and New Zealand, those very rarely actually get drawn. It's almost as if FIFA has an eye to make sure something like that doesn't happen. Do you know what I mean? So I'm mostly just keeping an eye on, from a Socceroos perspective, drawing any team out of Pot 3 that isn't Norway, because having a look at the level of competition, if there's one thing we learnt from the Tunisia win in Qatar, we can pretty comfortably compete with the most elite of African opposition, unless they're Morocco, of course. So, I think most of that Pot 3 is really quite a tasty proposition for us. And then again through Pot 4 almost ends up being more dangerous than Pot 3, because out of Pot 4 with the playoff teams there, you really do not want to come against some of these teams out of potentially Europe. Again, both Iraq and DR Congo have their challenges. And then even then, I mean, if you want to really go that far, you don't really want to come up against these sides like Cape Verde and Curacao, who have a lot to prove as well. I mean, there's just no easy games at a World Cup, right? So I think a lot of people should just check themselves a little bit and make sure they don't overreact and go with a lot of these stereotypes that we see from, especially unfortunately from a lot of ignorant Europeans, with a lot of their commentary on the stature of teams. But I think most importantly, I'm just glad that this draw has actually been retained similarly enough to the Qatar format, only with that point in difference with, like you've said in your short there, Lachie, with the tennis seeding with the top four, which has already been controversial enough throughout most of North America and Europe as well. So really looking forward to the prospect of it. And to be honest, the fact that there's 7, 8, 9 days until we can actually get into the weeds of the draw coming up and the draw happening.
Cannot wait.
Yeah, I'm a little bit downtrodden by that, because I really want to get stuck into it and figure out what journey lies ahead of us and many other teams ahead of the World Cup.
Matt, I want to pick up on something you said there. You said that perhaps FIFA has an eye towards certain things to make sure that perhaps certain groups don't necessarily play out the way that people would suggest. I mean, maybe it's not an eye so much as it is a ball warming machine.
Yes, correct. I'm not suggesting draws are fixed. I just there are obviously things that they can do to.
They can be manipulated, shall we say?
Exactly.
You conspiracy theorists. So one of the things that
I'll go get my tinfoil hat.
One of the things that FIFA are literally manipulating, but they're not hiding it, this is right out of the playbook, is that tennis seeding that Matt referenced. So if you don't know about this, basically what they're saying is for the 4 top nations in the world, so that is England, Argentina, France, and Spain, presuming they win their group, so this applies to whoever ends up winning their group as well. Basically what they're saying is in the knockout phase of the competition, none of those 4 teams can end up in the same quarter of the bracket as each other. So I think it's actually 1 and 2 are on opposites halves. So like 1 and 2 can't meet until the final. 3 and 4 theoretically couldn't meet until the final. But the 4 and 3 thing could be on either side. So it's not 1v3 or 1v4. It could be either of those 2 things. But basically they can't play each other until the semifinals at least. So that's one quirk of this new system. And the others, and bear with me here, this is a little strange. But it actually also, hold on. I have to ask you a question first, because I need to lay the groundwork for this. Are we accepting the premise that for the Socceroos, the Australian men's team going away to the World Cup, the objective here, the big goal that everyone would be wrapped with, is to win a knockout game? Win a game in the round of 32.
It has to be, simply because the round of 32 hasn't existed before. It is the level we consider ourselves at. We are one of the best teams in the world to be able to actually, by a condition of being in pot 2, that means we're ranked 24th in the tournament essentially. So how can we not expect to go into that round of 32 game expecting to win it? I mean, it's quite literally luck of the draw, right? But we'd have to expect to go in and to win it. And even if we don't, I would say winning more than one group game is probably a realistic objective as well, looking ahead to who pot 3 and 4 could be.
If you accept the premise that a round of 32 win is the marker of success for the Socceroos, then I put to you, it actually matters what little letter sits above your group name. Not just the teams you are playing, not just the locations of the cities, but the actual letter of the group. Matters in terms of winning that round of 32 game, because quite clearly in the old format of the World Cup, 32 goes into 16 for the knockouts. It's quite easy, which means in the round of 16, team that finished top of the group plays a team that finishes second in the group. Now, obviously, 48 doesn't half into 32. So we're getting some third place finishes in the group moving forward. And the way that this works out is that if you end up in group C, H, F, or J, you don't need to remember those. Basically, just know it's a third of the groups. Okay, I'll remind you when the draw happens. But if you're in one of those 4 bad groups, it means that you stick with that system of first plays second and second plays first in the round of 16. But if you are in any of the other 8 of 12 groups, if you win the group, you get to play a third ranked team. And if you finish second, you play another second ranked team. So that is unarguably a more favourable matchup in the round of 32 of the World Cup. So not only are we looking out for teams now, Matt, we're looking out for the letter as well.
I would just like to say, though, with this being the most geographically diverse World Cup ever held, the annoying thing about that, Lachie, is the element of the draw matters for travel a lot, right? Because there are some groups in the central bubble where, like, you're going to have to be going from Kansas to Atlanta to Guadalajara like it's nothing. And even though you might get a more favourable knockout game, that matters. Trust me, that matters. I mean, there are going to be some really, really disproportionate travel scenarios going on with certain teams in, Western or Eastern bubbles, but most of those central teams are not in a good way. And also, I made this observation earlier to a lot of people talking about all the draw news that's come out. The team that the poor pot 4 team, I really hope it's not an actual minnow when it's one of the playoff teams, to be honest, because the pot 4 team that plays Canada first has to be the only team that actually has to significantly trans-navigate North America. They start in Toronto, and then by match day 2, they're in Southern California. Like, that is nuts. The scale of that, and this is coming from a Western Australian, for goodness sake, the scale of having to do that in like 3 or 4 days is absurd. So I know that there's going to be something that rubs people the wrong way, no matter how the draw plays out.
Oh, of course. There are always things to complain about, but just the fact of the scale of the draw in terms of the teams and the things that we're looking out for now. The other thing is, Poletti, and I'll open this up now to any wild theories you have on what is actually a good World Cup draw, because I know I have mine, is I'm really coming around to the idea that from pot 1, I want to draw a top European nation. Because we have more European nations than groups in this World Cup, there are mandated that 4 groups are going to have 2 European teams, and you have to have at least one. So if we were to get even, say, a host nation, even let's say we get Mexico, right? We obviously can't draw anyone out of pot 2. The only European nations in pot 3 are Scotland and Norway. So that is a dangerous coin toss. We said that Norway are the best team in pot 3. That's dangerous. But then if you don't get either of those, then you have to get a playoff team for pot 4, which they're going to be good and bad nations. Italy is obviously danger, but it's also considered relative to the other nations that you could draw out of pot 4, which is a significant increase. So I'm hoping for an England. I'm hoping for a Spain. I still don't want France. I don't want another France game. We've had enough of those. But I'm really warming to the idea of a big European team in pot 1 rather than a host nation. I'll probably still take Canada. And then you just got to hope you probably don't double up on those European nations in the other stages of the draw.
So I said this on radio today. I said, regardless of, like looking at the playoff draw, right? If we get France and Denmark again, I'm just not going to watch. I'm dead set not going to watch. I cannot do a 3rd straight World Cup of France, Australia, Denmark, and what other random nation we're going to cop. I cannot do it again. I can't do it. I don't care how improved the result was against Denmark from the 2018 to the 2022 World Cup. I can't do it again. I literally cannot do it again. Now, as far as the draw itself is concerned, I think Australia, depending on the draw, can top the group. And so for that reason, I want to avoid one of the top European nations. I'm happy to take the flip of the coin with Scotland or Norway. I'm happy to perhaps look ahead a little bit to the playoffs and take the chance that a side like an Italy, a side like a Denmark is going to get done in the playoffs. I mean, how often does our group chat light up with roasting Christian about how bad Italy are every single time there's an international window, right? I think I'm prepared to take the chance that Italy get knocked out in the playoffs. I think I'm prepared to take the chance that Denmark get knocked out in the playoffs. They just have a bad 90 minutes against a side like a North Macedonia with a lot to prove, that Italy get knocked out by, I think it's Northern Ireland in their group, or Wales or something like that.
Wales.
Yeah, like I'm prepared to say that one of these, that are playing for their spot in a World Cup, a tournament they haven't been to before, in a long time, if not ever, rises up to the challenge of taking down an Italy, taking down a Denmark, and rises to the occasion in 90 minutes of knockout football. I think I'm prepared to take that chance for a better shot at topping the group, and
which is like a Canada or something.
It is, yes. That being said, I am incredibly, incredibly realistic and conspiracy theory riddled as well, that I think Australia is going to end up in a group of 2 European teams. So just for the love of God, please don't make it France and Denmark again. on the tennis seeding system, I hate it. And I'll tell you why I hate it. Because part of the magic of the World Cup is supposed to be that one of these nations, runs into a group of death and they get a knockout game that means that it's a challenge and you have a side that's that unfortunately gets knocked out. And that's the way a World Cup is supposed to be. Is you're supposed to get like an England versus Spain or an England versus Italy in a round of 16 or a quarter final, and someone's World Cup run comes to an end earlier than it should have by virtue of the draw. That's the way the World Cups are supposed to be. I don't like this manipulation by FIFA to almost ensure an easier passage for the top seeded nations through to the World Cup final, because Australia's never going to have a shot at that seeding. America is never going to have a shot at that seeding. America, by hosting it, is, a pot one team, but like the USA is never going to have that chance. Saudi Arabia is never going to have that chance. South Africa is never going to have that chance. I could go on and on and on about like there's realistically only 8 nations in the world that could ever have a shot at being a top 4 team in the world by virtue of the way that the seedings work, the way that the way that the point distribution system works, and all these things. And I think it takes away from what is supposed to be the leveler, is that yes, like the World Cup is supposed to be fair to an extent. Realistically, you should come into a World Cup thinking that every team has a shot to win it. And we know, like, realistically, not every team has a shot to win the World Cup, but it's that fairness which is sold that, every team has the same chance as any other to win the World Cup if they play good football. And this takes that away, which is why I hate it. And I based on what you've got in our rundown here, we might be talking about something else in a few minutes that's being manipulated. Yes. And don't worry, I've got more thoughts there. I have more thoughts there, to the point where you might have to kick me out of this call. But anyway, I hate the tennis seeding system, but I can understand why FIFA's done it, because it's Gianni Infantino's playhouse, and whatever he says goes.
Yeah, we'll move on, because we're already almost half an hour and we have plenty to talk about. But I will say I came in with the opinion that a lot of people hated this move because it was done by FIFA. But I think you've actually sold me there. I think part of the, Spain drawing an England in like the round of 16 because someone slipped up in the group stage somewhere, and the matchups got brought around. That is part of the beauty of it, and that allows for like a Morocco to get through to a semi-final with an interesting path. So well done, you sold me on that. But in terms of what you're referencing, which is some real manipulation from FIFA, and I think this is very fascinating. So for those who haven't seen, Cristiano Ronaldo got a red card in the penultimate round of World Cup qualifiers, I think against the Republic of Ireland, if I'm not mistaken, for the striking. And he got a 3-match suspension. I believe it was 1 mandatory, and then the disciplinary committee, the independent committee, gave him 3 games. Now, that's all well and good, and he served the first game of that suspension in the last round of the World Cup qualifiers. And he still has 2 games to go. The problem with that being, at least for FIFA, is that the next 2 competitive games that Portugal will play will be in the World Cup finals. Now, you have the argument about whether he's even a player that's going to start for them and make a massive impact. That's kind of besides the point. But FIFA have come out and said, Matt, that they have suspended the final 2 games of that suspension for a year. So as long as he doesn't do anything else bad, then essentially those 2 games don't count. Now, why I find this so fascinating is for a lot of the things that FIFA do that people point at and say, that is corrupt, that is manipulation, they often have some kind of argument for it, right? The worst thing about people you hate is that sometimes they're right. And there's always a little element of this is an argument that makes sense. And it's often the first time something's been done. So this is your reasoning. And then, in some way you can conceptualize why they've done this. Suspending players happens every week to hundreds of players around the world. The rules are very, very clear. There is no rule that says Cristiano Ronaldo should have his suspension suspended. This is something that people have seen thousands of times before, and FIFA have no excuse. And I was coming in here ready to say it's a mistake from FIFA. It won't matter. Nothing is going to change. Ronaldo is so critical to everything that's happening in Saudi Arabia at the moment. Saudi Arabia is critical to so many things that are happening with FIFA at the moment. So nothing's going to change. It's just such a clear example for people all around the world that FIFA will do whatever they want to do.
So I come back to the example of the fact that Columbus Crew should have been the host team at the Club World Cup. And we know what happened, right? FIFA know that the bulk of their income, okay, and a lot of things that we actually like about FIFA, the implementation of a platform like FIFA Plus, the fact that they have expanded the youth tournaments, the Beach World Cup has been really successful. Being able to hold that in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, that's a really, really beautiful thing that the Seychelles got to host a World Cup, right? The expansion of women's futsal, right? Making women's futsal relevant and helping the most, struggling to find the words here, but the ease of a platform like futsal. You can have a game on the floor in a gymnasium. Futsal can be played anywhere. So to be able to broaden that horizon for women to make the game more accessible, inherently a very, very healthy thing. The issue is that all of that is funded by in just totally insane amounts of income that FIFA get from a senior World Cup. And any chance they'll get to make more and more and more and more income from their one big cash cow, they will flog it and flog it and flog it and flog it. Ultimately, that's why we've got the expansion. Ultimately, that's why it's happening in a place like North America, where you've just got these NFL stadiums that are packed to the brim and suited capacity and whatever. But ultimately, yes, the corruption is a part of that, and it's a very, very hard pill to swallow. Knowing especially the age of Ronaldo and Messi, and knowing their importance to even children that are really, really young, when you think about the fact that like Ronaldo was already considered pretty cooked by the time that someone who's 5 or 6 years old that idolizes him, I mean, he would have been having his really weird stint, at Man United under Solskjaer when these kids were impressionable and learning and seeing everything, and it's so fascinating to me that these two men are still so relevant to the point where FIFA can corrupt things in their favor. It's and again, you bring up the tennis example. I mean, how hard was it for the sport of tennis to move on from Rafa and from Federer and Djokovic? I know he's still around, but you kind of understand what I'm saying. When the big three died, a part of tennis died. Its marketability died, and keeping Ronaldo at the tournament for a full slate of fixtures is of paramount importance to the game. It just is. So I understand it. And if I could play devil's advocate for a second, you could argue, well, look, I don't know if they're playing friendlies in the March window, but arguably the Armenia game, if it was a one-match ban, the part of the ban has already been served, and if it weren't for a tribunal, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. The other part of it is, if they do play games in March, yes, they aren't competitive, but I guess it lessens the blow in that there was still enough months and another window that's come and gone to the point where you could argue a player like this has served their time. And again, there's lots of examples in sport of ways that this has happened. I think, again, of the Sandpaper Gate and Stephen Smith, he's never going to captain again. And here he is, 8 years later, captaining Australia in the Ashes. These things are integral to sport. So I think it's nuanced enough for me to not really care, but you're 100% right in that the corruption of this and the way that we've seen Messi and Ronaldo put on a platform to end their careers, it's pretty egregious. Because again, you know me, I'm the biggest advocate for the fact that there are 211 plus member nations of this sport, and they ought to be celebrated, and they're just in the public discourse of global football, they simply are not given a platform. So I care a lot about, let's not talk about Ronaldo and Messi, let's talk about, Shomurodov for Uzbekistan, and I really do believe in that in my heart and hearts, but I'm actually willing to really not care that much about this. I think another part of it is that we've already seen that Portugal are going to move on from Ronaldo pretty quick smart anyway as a footballing nation. So there's a lot of that comes into this to the point where I'm almost willing to be okay with it, but let's not ignore that, there's an issue here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I'm almost like numb to the inevitability of it all as well. Like, football is the most played game in the world. It's going to generate a lot of revenue. You know, take you back to your high school Shakespeare classes. Power corrupts, right? And as much as we want an organising body that is going to act in the best interests of everybody all the time, I firmly believe that is not possible. So something like this feels just like another step in the road. Poletti, the leash is off.
Okay, so I want to unpack a little bit of what Matt said there, right? The idea of needing to run the FIFA cash cow into the ground. I'd argue they don't need to. This FIFA, by its statute, is supposed to be a not-for-profit organisation. Now, by that virtue, the AFL is also supposed to be a not-for-profit organisation, and we know that's not the case. FIFA has...
Well, hold on. Just a very important clarification. Non-for-profit is a legal distinction. So the idea is that there is no owners of these organizations that are taking money away from the business. Now, in the AFL situation, that looks like their revenue going into staff who run the AFL and community programs and development programs. FIFA, yes, I'm sure it's a little dodgy. That money gets passed around in lots of different ways. But that is a legal distinction where football clubs have owners, right, that do take on the profits of what they do.
No, and I understand that, but I was just providing a more local example, right? And you'll understand what I'm getting to when I say that. FIFA have literal billions of dollars sitting in bank accounts and reserves that's supposed to be a not-for-profit organization. There are not-for-profit organizations all around Australia that if they have even a number as small as $1,000 sitting in their bank accounts at the end of the financial year because it's not going, it's, the ATO can allege that it's not going to where it's supposed to go and they can lose their not-for-profit status, right? The AFL is one of the not-for-profit organizations that is apparently exempt from that based on the amount of numbers that they throw around. And so for FIFA, I'd argue that they don't actually need to flog everything for what it's worth because they've got literal billions of dollars sitting in reserve for things like the futsal for the futsal World Cup and, all that sort of stuff. So I just wanted to touch on that for a moment. I almost want Sepp Blatter back because at least, Gianni Infantino has been so brazen with his corruption. Sepp Blatter was one of those situations where it's like, okay, yeah, we know it's happening, but we can't prove it until we could. I almost want to go back to that slight ignorance that was there instead of someone who is so brazen to manipulate a situation where Cristiano Ronaldo, who should not even be allowed on US soil, is having a suspension manipulated to appear at the World Cup so that FIFA can make some more money. It just drives me absolutely insane. And then the other point I wanted to touch on that you raised, Matt, as I see you cackling maniacally on mute in the background, is you mentioned the idea of a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old who's, worshipping Ronaldo, worshipping a Messi as they head towards the back end of their careers, and they're arguably not at their peak anymore. Something that sticks out to me was when Barcelona came to Australia in 2022 to play the All-Stars. They obviously had the game, but then they had the open training sessions the day before. And this was one of the first events that I was covering as accredited media. And I turned up to the open training session to, get some photos and stuff like that. And one thing that stands out for me from that Barcelona open training session was towards the end, they've done their little, 1 hour show for the people that turn up, for the cameras and all of that. And then they're going around and they're signing autographs. And the entire time they're signing autographs, 10 meters away from where I ended up situating to try and get some more photos, I can hear this kid who couldn't have been any older than 4 years old screaming nonstop at the top of his lungs for 10 minutes, calling for Sergio Busquets to come over. Sergio, to the point where he'd worked himself into a state of tears for like 10 minutes straight trying to get Sergio Busquets to come over. This is a 4-year-old kid trying to call over 33-year-old Sergio Busquets, who, like, there's no way this kid's seen this guy at this peak, right? But that's the level of what we're dealing with here with Ronaldo and Messi. And it just, I don't know. It's just something that doesn't make sense to me. Like, it just absolutely does not make sense to me at all.
That's football for you.
It is.
Football
it's a beautiful game for a reason, right?
I mean, when you think about like footballers and their fame and even like setting an example for kids, right? Like the examples are everywhere. And it's not just those older players. Like look at Lamine Yamal at the moment. He is probably the most hyped footballer under the age of 40, right? when we take away Ronaldo and Messi. I think he sets a really poor example for kids who look up to him, with all the stories that you hear about, you know, the parties that he has and the amount of money and the trips on boats. And I don't know. Power corrupts. I'll leave you with that. I think everyone's disappointed about it. I think everyone knew, everyone's not surprised that it happens, but it happens. That's the world of football that we live in. Shall we talk about some A-League? There is a massive weekend of football.
Let's get me onto something happy, please.
I can't believe it's taken us 45 minutes to get onto the A-League. Now, Matt, you obviously came in a little late. You haven't had any brainstorming time, so I'll come to you last. But we're going to get stuck into our weekend look. So who's it a big weekend for, in a dream world, and a worst-case scenario? So, Poletti, I'm going to kick us off today. Who's it a big weekend for? Anthony Pantazopoulos. Now... we talk about rivalries.
I know exactly why you've chosen this.
I absolutely love the media that he has done this week, just saying that he wants to hit blokes when he gets out there on Saturday night. We desperately, desperately need some more people like him who just genuinely don't like the opposition. You know what? People will say he's putting something on for the media, but they picked the right bloke to do that media. He is the Western Sydney boy who plays with the slick back hair, tucks his shirt in, and isn't afraid to get stuck in. And I absolutely I think he literally said he enjoys inserting physical pain on Sydney FC players, right? That is literally part of the promo that the Wanderers are putting out. I think it's great. We need these games to be amped up. I hated it last year when we saw those stories about players from either side playing golf with each other in the lead up. Those who have seen the one-on-one video that we put out on Wednesday with Joe, K Football, and Abs, we made them debate this topic, and Joe was with me, and Abs was actually saying he was okay with it. But fans spend so much effort, and this is most of Joe's argument as well. Fans put so much effort into these clubs and this league. And to devalue the animosity like that, I hated. I really did.
Yep.
So, look, maybe even play golf. Don't put it on social media for sure.
Yeah,
I love what Anthony's done.
I think that's where I fall on that is if you're going to play golf, so be it. Just don't stick it on socials. And I think if memory serves me correctly, it was the pro golfer they were playing with who stuck it on socials. But surely, and I'm going to use a far-fetched reference here that maybe 10% of our audience will understand. But in the world of wrestling, right, you've got your good guys and you've got your bad guys, right? Your faces and your heels. And we know behind the scenes that, most people are, most of the wrestlers are chummy with each other, right? They're all friends, right? If you're in the midst of a high profile feud, with your number one face guy and your number one heel guy, don't post that you're hanging out with each other behind the scenes, right? It's the concept of kayfabe. And okay, we know this is modern sport. We know, players from rival teams, they all play with each other. It wouldn't surprise me if, if Pantazopoulos and, Pat Wood end up playing for Perth Glory together next year and, they end up becoming really good friends, but this time of year they're on, the opposite sides of a rivalry. And so, we understand that's modern sport, but keep the illusion, and for Pantazopoulos, obviously it's genuine, Sydney are the enemy. It's what they represent. but so just keep it off socials. Like, tell that to the pro golfer. Hey, maybe don't put this on socials. Maybe wait until after the derby to put it on socials and make it look like it took place next Wednesday instead of this Wednesday.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my who's. It's a big weekend for. Anthony, can't wait for you to 2-foot someone in the first 10 minutes and get sent off. I'm gonna absolutely love it. But I'm hoping for a very big Sydney derby. Poletti, who's it a big weekend for?
To avoid, I kind of want to avoid going with the obvious one, but I think it's the elephant in the room that has to be talked about here. I think it's a massive weekend for Alan Stajic. I think this makes or breaks his employment with the Western Sydney Wanderers. I think if it's a 2-1 janky 89th minute controversial penalty that breaks a 1-1 or like a marginal offside call or something like that, then I think you can get away with that if you keep it at 1-1 for the majority of the contest. But if this is an absolute 3-0, 4-1 shellacking and the Wanderers never look like they're in the game from the get-go, I think he's walking out of Wonderland on Saturday night without a job.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Matt, who's it a big weekend for?
Well, I just want to come back to the fact that, in these desperate times, I do like to make everything a little bit glory related. But when BT and the guys at the Far Post Perth posted the table after Glory's win away to Newcastle, and I realised that we are on the same points, the same goal difference, the same record as Melbourne Victory, that really sparked something in me to think, the Dealers is in a lot of trouble. And this goes back to our big predictions game here at RBA, where I've again predicted that Brisbane will win on Friday night. There's going to be a lot of pressure Victory's way and a lot of pressure towards Arthur Dealers. So massive weekend for him to make sure that he can really re-establish his pride and his senior management career. I've always felt that his appointment felt like some kind of stopgap. I've never really felt that Arthur is at that level to at least lead a club like Melbourne Victory for the next couple of years into the future. The fact that he managed them in a grand final is a huge deal, right? And again, you're manager of, essentially the biggest, football-related commodity in all of Oceania, right? Like it's a big deal to be the head coach of Melbourne Victory. But it's clear to me that there is a bit of a backward slide within the club. And they've hit the reset button a lot in the last couple of years. I'm not going to deny that, and I'm not going to say that some of it hasn't been their fault, some of it has been their fault. I mean, a lot's gone on with ownership. With Popovich essentially leaving and becoming the head coach of the Socceroos. They've had to deal with a lot, right? But Dilesh, just for me, is not someone that screams long-term future, and that's where this is really going to come to a head. And if it's not dealt with this season, they definitely will be having another really sort of crisis level off season, I think. And which again, given everything that's gone on that I've been explaining, all the more reason why you want to avoid that. So something has to give. And for me, going away to Queensland, already enough of a test because Valkanis will have a lot of fight to them as well, right? So really, really crucial game for Diles and for Victory on Friday night.
100%. You mentioned the predictions game. If for those who are listening are not aware, that's the little show we do over on YouTube for our YouTube members. If you are one, we go through every game, every fixture for the round, game by game, give our predictions as well. It's always a little bit of fun. I'll let you on a little freebie as well. My prediction was this week was that those two guys that you both mentioned, Arthur Dillis or Alan Stajic, that one of those won't have a job at the end of this round. So it's going to be fascinating to see how they go. I think you're both right. Our next question is in a dream world. And now for me, Matt, branching off what you said with Arthur Dillis at Melbourne Victory, in a dream world, I think Nishan Velupillay, finally fit again from his ankle surgery, comes off the bench. I don't think he's going to be fit to start, but he will feature at some point, and scores specifically in the striker position. I think quite literally, he's the last roll of the dice to try and get someone down the middle of the field that's going to score goals for Melbourne Victory. If Nish can't do it, if Nikos Virgos can't do it, to be honest, I never really thought Ching Reese could do it. I don't know where else Dillis goes. And that is a thing against the recruitment, right, which the coach is not always the main driver of. There's other people at play here. So who do you blame, the goal scorer, the players, or the coach? Who knows? But it's definitely a tense time at Melbourne Victory. Poletti, in a dream world?
in a dream world, Brisbane Roar are able to draw 5 figures to a home game. I know they've got a 2-for-1 ticket offer going at the moment.
Yeah.
I know they've got a 2-for-1 ticket offer. I don't know if they can get to 10K, which is why I say it's a dream world, because I think, like, all things being equal, they can get 10,000 to the game on Friday night. I just don't think they will, but I would love to see it happen, even though it would kind of really put a dampen on my prediction from the predictions game, which was that the other 5 games combined would not outdraw the Sydney Derby by more than 6,000 people. Because I had a look at the list of fixtures, and I'm just like, well, Brisbane will probably draw, X amount, and then Wellington, they drew absolutely nothing against Macarthur last week, and Macarthur don't always necessarily draw a strong home crowd either. So I looked at it and I thought the Derby's probably going to sell out, and okay, maybe not everyone's going to turn up, but I think it's a genuine shout to say that the Derby could get 26,000. And you have a look at the other games. Auckland haven't been drawing a lot either, so I don't know this, but just to give the listeners a little bit of a tease to sign up to a membership as to the logic and the thinking there. So my dream world scenario is that Brisbane are able to draw 10K against the Melbourne Victory.
I think it's possible. I think it's a perfect storm. You got, it feels like a more engaged fan base than usual. The opportunity to down an old foe that is on their heels as well. And they're coming off good momentum. They're playing well. They're winning games. So I think they'll get close for sure. Matt, in a dream world?
A bit WA coded again, and I do apologise if you don't get the reference, but I think Anthony Radic is going to have to bite the bullet and give birth to the ledge, as he referred to himself during the week. Sorry. Look, listen, Adam Griffiths is a character, and is there something within the spirit of the team and the way they came together after that 3 points in Newcastle that really tells me that, listen, he's a bit eccentric, he's neurodivergent. There's a lot about Adam that really I can understand won't work in a head coaching role. And again, Radic and the club have been very serious about the fact that we need a more serious candidate. But the fact of the matter is, if his sort of outward-facing, eccentric character is part of the reason the teams they've been able to come together and mobilise and play a lot better. And again, that there's not exactly a shortage of leadership figures. You've got O'Neill around, you've got Risdon around, you've got Wooten, you've got Taggart. There's enough leadership there to not actually need a superimposing head coach figure to really bring that team to a bit of stability. And so I think, yes, it is right to want more from the person that you are appointing as head coach. But I think Adam is capable enough of doing the job. And I say this as someone that's spoken to him quite intensely. I understand that he sees himself as a bit of a transitional figure, but with the way he's acting right now, and for him to come out in his press conference and say something that awkward about his legacy and what he wants from himself, I just something's really, really biting me the right way. And so I think that they can give Adam the job for the not long-term future, but if we're looking at the end of 25, 26, I don't see a problem with it. I can just see why it's at odds with the vision that those in leadership at the club want. So I think, again, if there's at least a good result that can come still away in New South Wales, away to Macarthur, then really look at actually the potential of giving Adam the job for the rest of the season.
I want to bounce off that because it will provide a very nice segue into the worst case scenario that I've got. Now, to take everyone a little bit inside baseball, Lachie made me change my worst case scenario because my worst case scenario was originally going to be that the Wanderers get smacked and Alan Stajic gets sacked, and it was the worst case scenario for the Western Sydney Wanderers, but he wanted me to choose something different. So my worst case scenario...
I just want some different storylines going on.
And I don't understand that. So I'm going with my worst case scenario is for the Perth Glory, is that they travel away to Macarthur, they get absolutely smacked again, and Adam Griffiths costs himself any chance of getting the job for the end of the season, and Perth Glory go another couple of weeks without having a full-time coach.
Sorry. My complaint was that you're bringing up something that's already been brought up, and then you went for Perth Glory, which Matt has already done twice.
Look, I'm sorry, but like that was what I came up with. You wanted me to come up with something that wasn't Wanderers related, and yeah, okay, I know Matt just spent 2 minutes talking about it, but I can't. Like, I didn't have a third option lined up. I'm sorry, I didn't have a third option lined up. I can go back to the world with Stajic if you want. I'll end up on the dressing room wall at the Western Sydney Wanderers. How about that?
Fair enough. You know what? I can't even talk because I realize I've made an error. I changed my inner dream world on the fly, and I realize I'm now doubling up on it. But I'm going Melbourne victory again. I reckon in a worst case scenario, Melbourne victory get double-digit shots on target and still don't manage to score a goal. Just the whole shots to goal ratio just completely falls through the floor. And I don't know, maybe they'll never score again. Who knows? It might just never happen. That'd be my worst case scenario. Matt, why don't you finish us off?
Look, let's just give a little bit of a moment to the Newcastle Jets because again, all the optimism with Mark Milligan coming in, a manager that like very clearly has a really long-term future as a head coach in the league. An exciting project with a really young core that's finally been able to lift to another gear, win a piece of silverware. And now, not only have they just come from this embarrassing loss to Perth, they're going away to Auckland. And worst case scenario would be that is an ugly loss that literally sets the club back like years. The Milligan project just can't afford it. So I really don't want Auckland to completely blow them out of the water. It could happen. It's a very real possibility, and no one wants to see Nui that far down after literally like this desperate, almost 20-year wait for silverware coming to an end. So Auckland, if it's going to be a comprehensive win, just a 1-0 or 2-0 or something, please. I don't want Newcastle to be set back that far.
It's the Australia Cup curse, baby.
Yeah, it does strange things to clubs that go on and win that competition. Milligan's definitely finding it a little tough in the alley at the moment. I'm with you. I think that most people love the Jets, and I think they admire what Milligan's trying to do. So hopefully they don't cop too many beatings before it all turns around on them again. Of course, there's plenty of other football going on this weekend. The Matildas are playing Friday nights. Gossy good times over against New Zealand in the first of a 2-match series. Go listen to the Dubcast if you want to hear more chat about that game with Poletti and Burke. Of course, final window for the Matildas before the squad is selected for the Women's Asian Cup in Australia, kicking off in March of 2026. There's also the Australian Championship semi-finals, South Melbourne against Heidelberg and Marconi against Moreton City. The penultimate weekend of that competition, the build-up to that has been excellent, so plenty of football to keep an eye on over the next few days. But that will do for this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. Don't forget, if you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you're on the podcasting platforms, follow us there. Give us a little rating as well. We appreciate all your support. Stay tuned on the socials. Lots of stuff coming out there as well. But Poletti, thank you for your time today. Off to bed.
Yes, off to bed. Somewhere that I'm sure Stefan Mork wishes he could be right now. I haven't had a look at the game itself, but I can tell you that at halftime, it is Beijing Guan 1, Kongan Hanoi FC 0. So it's a big second half coming up for Stefan Mork's side. Obviously, by the time you've listened to this, you'll know the result of that game. But it's not looking good so far.
Absolutely, we need them. We need them to kick China out, Matt. We need it for the coefficient.
Coefficient, World Cup draw, football, flags, geography, it's all good fun.
It's been like that at the moment. Thank you very much for listening at home. We appreciate your company. Hope you're enjoying all the podcasts as usual, but we'll see you next time. Goodbye.